showtime here on Tuesday night, and you could just feel the NFL getting closer and closer with each day. Each week of the Fantasy Football Buzz podcast is just another day closer to the beginning of the NFL season. And we are here tonight on the Fantasy Football Buzz podcast to talk to you through this long period of time where we have to wait for football. And we're going to do that tonight. We'll do that every Tuesday night. And in fact, during the summer, we'll probably do a few shows a week. But for right now, it's Tuesday night. We've got the Commish. We've got Cyclop over there. How are you doing tonight, Cyclop?
I am doing great tonight. And just as a reminder, by the way, it looks like you lost some weight. You're looking good. I haven't seen you live in quite a long time, but you're looking good. I just wanted to mention that.
Appreciate
it. But do you remember last year this time? Right, we're doing shit. Right, it's like, and I know we've talked about it, but it was like, well, you kept going, and your probability kept going up.
Yeah.
Right, as far as not having a season, and mine was kind of, mine was going up. Yours was going down. Right. But of course, we ended up having a season, and there was some issues here and there. But I'm feeling good. Training camps are opening. Some football will be starting soon. Lots of news out there, injuries, everything going on. So it gives us something to talk about.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about some of the news, some of the latest and greatest coming out in the NFL. We're also going to we're going to open up the Fantasy Buzz Mailbag. We haven't done that in a while. These are questions that we've accumulated throughout the week on our different sites, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and we're going to talk about those tonight. Also, while we're doing our Mailbag Tuesday, if anybody has any questions and they don't want to wait a whole week for the answer, go ahead and ask the question tonight. You can comment on YouTube Live or Facebook Live, or just give us a call, 772-800-BUZZ. You can speak to us, ask the question there, or like I said, put it in the comments section. We'll do a quick hello to our producer, Loopy. How you doing tonight?
Doing all right. Same stuff going on. Got my phone stolen on Saturday, so I've been trying to slowly get my phone back and logged into everything. So that's what I've been up to.
So tell us again, because we didn't quite get the whole story. You were I was at Rolling Loud, which is a ginormous music festival, 200,000 plus people, and I was pretty much pickpocketed in a crowd. Right, because you probably hadn't had a drink or anything, right? And your phone just disappears.
No, I was completely sober. I drove there. I drove back. I drove down and back 6 times. So I wasn't touching alcohol or anything, but.
Okay. Well, we appreciate that. And don't understand it, but we appreciate it.
It was just a frustrated night.
No, we understand you're frustrated, but so everyone can give their empathy to Loopy behind the scenes here for tonight, but we appreciate you coming on, and I'm sure we'll bring you up soon. All right, so like every Tuesday night recently, we've started off our show speaking to Kenneth, who is the Fantasy Football Buzz podcast #1 fan. Actually, I'm assuming that. I haven't asked him that. I would assume he's our #1 fan. He's on the phone right now, and what we've allowed him to do, or I should say, we are honored to allow him to give us the question of the night. So tonight is the Kenneth question of the night for this Tuesday night. Kenneth, how are you tonight?
Pretty good, and you would be assuming right.
All right. I love it. That's great. So what is your yeah?
The question of the night is, which veteran QB will have the best season on their new team? Your choices are Goff with Detroit.
No.
Stafford with the Rams.
Yes.
Fitzpatrick with Washington.
Maybe.
Carolina Sam Darnold.
No.
Maybe Carson Wentz.
No.
Or Denver Teddy Bridgewater.
No. Okay. Well, before I answer, even though I just did, who do you think, Kenneth, will be the veteran QB that has switched teams that will have the best? Are we talking best fantasy year? I guess the most fantasy points, right?
No, it doesn't say anything in regards to fantasy-wise.
So, we'll just modify it a little bit. So, because it could be best year, who's going to have the most yards, who's going to have the most touchdowns, etc., or QB rating. Let's make it which of those veteran quarterbacks that have switched teams will have the most fantasy football points. Who do you think that's going to be, Kenneth?
I'm gonna give a slight edge to Stafford with the Rams.
That's my boy. Absolutely. Have to agree with you there.
You know, Kenneth, this is actually a great question and something that there's not a.
I like the defense that the Rams have, especially with Aaron Donald.
Right. Okay, Brad, what were you saying?
So this is actually a very good question. There's a lot of quarterbacks that are on new teams. The one that everybody is going to immediately go to is Stafford. He's got a fantastic team around him. He's got a great head coach for his abilities. He's got good receivers. Of course, they did lose Akers, but they have Henderson. But I think there's a few other ones in there that could rival them, right? Get up into the discussion of it for a few reasons. One being injury history with Stafford, and a few other reasons. I'm going to agree with Stafford, but the one I think that has a chance to kind of have a very, very big comeback year is Carson Wentz in Indy. And I know a lot of people, Commissioner, are going to shake your head, and that's okay.
Where's my dollar? Because this is dollar worthy right now. Because out of that whole list that was given to us, that Kenneth gave us of these veteran QBs that are on new teams.
Yep. Oh, what are you going to pick Sam Darnold instead of him?
Of course I'm not going to pick Sam Darnold instead of him. But if it's not going to be Stafford, why would it not be Fitzpatrick? Fitzy's going to have over 4,000 yards passing. He's going to, that offense is insane. He's got a good offensive line. The defense is top notch. I mean, Carson Wentz, really?
I think Koo might have
stop it 2020 for a second.
All right,
did you see
more points than Carson Wentz?
Have you seen Fitzpatrick's career? Okay,
yes. You can't go by that.
You can't go by his career?
No,
hold on.
You can't go by. Hold on. You're talking about past history.
He's also 50 years old.
But if you look at his
beard's going to be down to his knees. He's going to trip over his beard.
Last year, he played very, very well. And from a fantasy standpoint, he played exceptional, actually. He really did.
And the year that he played in Tampa Bay, he just lit the place on fire.
Until he fell apart.
Those interceptions, but we're not talking about NFL quarterback. You'll take the interceptions, the -2 points for the 3-4 touchdowns and the 350 yards. And by the way, he's got some nice targets to throw to in Washington with a nice balanced attack.
Okay, Kenneth, what were you going to say?
I have to somewhat agree with Brad, but there's actually one point that he forgot to mention.
That he's always wrong?
Not that.
Did you say Wonstadt?
That Vince had Coach Frank Reich time in Philly.
Yeah, I don't know how much of an impact that's going to have. I mean, we've seen all of these guys play before. We've seen what they can do, what they can't do. Look, I grabbed Carson Wentz last year, and he did well for me. I think I had him maybe a few years ago as well. And so I'm not denying that Carson Wentz doesn't have the talent. I just don't think that offense is necessarily a pass-first offense. I think that it's going to actually be a run-first offense. They don't have the receiver core that Stafford's going to have or that Fitzpatrick has. So I don't know, man. I mean, look, would I be shocked? No. But am I going to lose $1? No. In fact, I'm going to make $1 from Brad for this. So it's going to be Stafford.
I'm not saying he's going to outdo Stafford. What I'm saying is if there's another quarterback that I'm going to pick out of that group,
right,
is going to be Wentz. That's what I'm saying.
All right. That's fair.
And I do have a fantasy question for you.
Sure.
Which defense do you consider to be having like a breakout year this year? Now, in my humble opinion, there's actually two that I think could qualify. Cleveland, especially with the addition of Clowney, and probably Washington.
Yeah, well, Washington, I agree that Washington is really going to be one of the top 5 defenses in the league. I don't doubt that for a second. Whether or not that would be considered breakout, right? I don't know, because they actually started breaking out at the end of last year.
Right.
So if we're going to talk breakout, which is a team that really was near the bottom, that all of a sudden is going to be near the top, I don't know what's out there that is going to do that turnaround. It could be the Dolphins, right? It could be the Broncos. I mean, there are some good defenses that could surprise you and end up in the top 5.
If I'm gonna start somewhere here, it's gonna be with a team that gets to play the Jets twice. Okay, so that's the Dolphins, right? Because Buffalo isn't going to be a breakout. New England has done well, and they're not going to, be. New England actually had a decent year last year.
Yeah, I think the Dolphin defense though will score more than the Patriots defense. I'm not. Yeah. I don't have a doubt in my mind, and that might be a homer thing to say, but I really believe the Dolphins defense this year is going to score more fantasy points than the Patriots. Because they spent their free agency grabbing tight ends, so
right,
they just care about tight ends. All right, Kenneth. Well, we appreciate it, and if you all have questions, we want to answer them. So you can do it in one of 2 different ways. One, you can give us a call at 772-800-BUZZ, or just go ahead and comment in YouTube Live or Facebook Live. Tweet us. I think Belt Loops is on Twitter right now, seeing if people are asking any questions, and that's at FF Buzz Podcast. So if you're on Twitter, go ahead and hit us up on that as well. In the meantime, we all saw 2020 for a brief moment. He's having internet issues, so we may or may not see 2020 again, which would mean less Young Ho Koo jokes against me. But Brad, you'll have you'll have to step up in that realm. So, Brad, let's talk about some of the news first before we get into the mailbag. There was a great picture of Aaron Rodgers walking down the walkway on the way to training camp. What gives?
Yeah, I think it's been an off season of Aaron Rodgers news, right? Is he going to be there? Is he not? What are they going to do? All of a sudden, there's concessions. He's in camp. All is well in Green Bay. It looks like maybe it'll be 1 year, and then they're going to let him go, whatever the case may be. But what we care about, right? If you're a dynasty league right now, you're not picking Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback. No, he's 38 years old, right? So if you're in a redraft league, you're thinking about this year, and that's what you're thinking about. So he's got some tools there. He's got the rookie Rodgers, right, in the slot. He's got Adams. He's got his running back. Things are looking good in Green Bay, and everyone's going to be with the timing and the this and the that, and they're going to be, 3-3 after 6 games, and he's going to come out and he's going to be like, relax, and he's just going to do his thing that been doing for years and years and years. Does it equate to a top 10 fantasy quarterback? We'll see. Right? Are there other?
I think we were doubting him last year. Right, mistake.
And he started off slow. He started off a little slow.
He did start off slow, but for a lot of people that had him, at the end of the season, it really helped them.
Right.
I have him right around that spot. Right, I have him right around a QB 9, QB 10, grabbing him maybe in the 10th round. I don't think you can go wrong with Rodgers except in one case. Right.
Okay.
If for whatever reason, and I don't anticipate this because I really think Green Bay is going to do well, but in the event things go wrong, horribly wrong, and they're not performing, and even if Rodgers is performing, but they're not winning games, knowing that Aaron Rodgers is gone next year, everyone's assuming he's gone next year, we might start seeing a little Jordan Love popping up in these games if they don't mean anything. So
I think the minute Jordan Love pops up in a game, that means, unless it's the fourth quarter and then they're getting blown out or whatever the case may be, that means Green Bay, I would think, may look to trade him at that point.
It's possible, of course, but he also knows that he has the leverage. So Well, actually, the team does, but we'll see.
The team really does, yeah.
Yeah, we will see. But as far as fantasy value, right? He jumps up from what was a question mark to a possibly QB9, QB10. He also has now increased the value of Devontae Adams, of
Absolutely.
Aaron Jones, right? So these are people that we didn't know what would happen in that offense, especially Devontae. He's projected to go in the first round. Without Aaron Rodgers, he's still a good quarterback.
He's still a good wide receiver.
I'm sorry,
about Adam.
A good wide receiver, but not necessarily one that would have gone in the first round.
Right. He's probably looking closer to the third round without Aaron Rodgers there because you just don't know. But with Rodgers, I mean, he targets him in the red zone. They pass first for the most part in the red zone, and a lot of times that's to Adams on the slants or the little outs or whatever the case may be. So everything is kind of good fantasy wise and Green Bay wise as far as that goes.
Absolutely. Okay, so there's a few other little things, not necessarily fantasy worthy. I know Xavier Howard actually reported to camp. So right now there's no major issues. It will be interesting to see, again, the Cam Akers fallout that we talked about last week, whether or not Henderson is going to be able to step up to the plate or stay healthy at the plate.
So we are getting, Belt Loops just gave us some breaking news. Okay. And Xavier Howard has requested a trade.
Okay.
The Dolphins. So that is news from 1 minute ago. Thank you, Loops. We appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. I pulled up it's kind of blurry. I pulled up his Instagram and he released 1 minute ago saying that just how the Dolphins can have a business first approach, so can he. And he wanted to make it clear he is not happy and has requested a trade. But until that trade happens, he said he is showing up so he does not get fined and will handle himself like most professionals do.
Wow. Just like Minka all over again.
Yeah. He'll end up in Pittsburgh.
You never know. All right. I don't want to focus on that because it pisses me off. So what we're going to do is
frustrating. Yeah. That takes a Dolphin defense, right? Yeah. That you could be looking at in the top 8 and just one player like that can drop them a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so this is what we're going to do. We know that tonight is Mailbag Tuesday. We're going to go ahead. We're going to jump into the mailbag. We'll start answering some questions. Again, if you all have questions and want to know what to do, where, if you're the 5th pick in the draft, who are you going to pick? Who should you pick in the second round? Give us a call, 772-800-BUZZ, or comment YouTube Live or Facebook Live. We'll jump right into that Buzz mailbag. And our first question is from Pete in Denver, who's got a 10-team PPR redraft. He wants to know who is the sleeper that's not talked about. The not talked about much running back that you feel can be a top 10 running back this year.
Right. So I think what he's asking is a matter of a running back who, everyone's talking about Aaron Jones now. People talk about Elliott. Where is he? All these top running backs. But I think what he's asking is a running back that is kind of under the radar right now.
5.
Right. So I thought about this, and I'm going to give you my answer.
Okay.
My answer is Miles Sanders. Okay. He has shown he has the talent to be a very good fantasy running back, right? He's been hurt. The offense has been a mess. They changed quarterbacks, all of these things. But now, and I'm not saying they're going to be great. I mean, they have receiver issues, but if he can stay healthy and he has Jalen Hurts back there, I think that he can make some noise. But I think so much requires him staying healthy, and that's the biggest problem with him. But I think if he does, he has that home run speed. He can hit the holes and have those every other game, have a 60 or 70 yard touchdown. You start getting some of those and you can move way up the list as far as a fantasy running back.
I agree. I think Sanders is a good one. I think I was just doing a calculation here. A lot of the running backs where Sanders is projected to go, which is
about 20th right now, 20th in running back.
Right, but right around the fourth round, right? Fourth round,
yeah.
Third round, fourth round, fifth round.
Mid third to mid fourth, probably.
That's where you have that cluster, right, of J.K. Dobbins and Henderson and Sanders and Montgomery.
Josh Jacobs and
Swift. Jacobs, I think, is below that. I don't see a possibility of Jacobs. I like the idea of J.K. Dobbins. Now, again, I don't know what's going to happen with Gus Edwards, and we got to look at preseason and what's happening. But the little calculation that I was just doing is that I was looking at what J.K. Dobbins did at the end of last year. In the last 5 games for Dobbins, he averaged 16 points a game.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if 16 points is going to get you in the top 5, but
right.
It's going to get you close. And if all of a sudden Lamar decides that he wants to be a quarterback, right?
Right.
And hands off the ball on the goal line instead of running it in, I think Dobbins has a good chance, not a good chance, but I think Dobbins has a chance of getting into that, of sneaking into that top 5.
Right.
The question is for all these top 5, Brad, for these guys, let's look at our top 5 ranked running backs right now. McCaffrey, Cook, Henry, Kamara, Barkley, Elliott, one of those.
Right.
Is it possible that one of these guys is going to leapfrog any of those guys? Can Dobbins leapfrog? Can Sanders leapfrog?
Oh, absolutely. Because from the guys you just mentioned, okay, a few of these guys, not necessarily a few, I think one of them hits a wall, whether it's Henry or Kamara. I'm a little worried about this year because I think defenses are going to be able to focus on him,
right?
And you don't have it's a whole different team there, right? Without Breeze and without Michael Thomas for who knows how long, and we'll talk about that. So Kamara is going to be a focal point, but how much is he going to be able to handle, right? We saw a lot of Latavius Murray last year, and you might see a decent split of that as well again. And I think that at least one of those guys that we just mentioned, right, whether it's David Montgomery or Miles Sanders or
J.K. Dobbins,
J.K. Dobbins will finish ahead of those guys. If we picked 5 guys from that group of 18 to 23 rated running backs right now, which is right around where Miles Sanders is,
right,
and pick those 5 guys and those 5 guys who are number 1, probably 2 of those guys will finish ahead of those 5 guys.
Okay. I think it's a possibility, and that was a good question, Peter. We appreciate it. We'll go on to the next one. This is actually from Alex, all the way on the other side of the country. Do you let teams that are mathematically eliminated from the playoffs make trades? This is a league question. I like this. So we're getting out of the numbers here, right? And we're getting into No, I think it's great. We're getting into rules, league rules, and ethics and more. I love this. This is a great question. Do we? Why? Why would you let somebody who's mathematically eliminated make? If we're not talking about dynasty or keeper, why would you make?
Okay, so you're right. It's a league-based rule. Now, in our league, in a lot of leagues, there is a penalty for coming in last, right? So this is a potential why you can do that. As we had this question, I gotten this emailed about 3 days ago, for the show. And then I'm listening today as I was driving to a fantasy show. And this question actually came up on the show.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it was one of the announcers today. I don't remember exactly who it was. And they're like, yeah, I had to put that rule in because people get frustrated. Some of these guys are in 10 and 15 leagues, but people just get frustrated and like, screw it. And they just dump their team. Right. So I actually like this rule. And
most stumps can be voided, right? So if you have, whether it's a commissioner veto or if you have a team vote, if somebody's making a trade and it's not fair, that's one thing. If somebody's making a trade that's fair, and if you understand that it's because that they don't want to end up in last place, you're right. I think that they should be able to. That's a great question.
Yeah.
So you say no, I say yes. You've convinced me. Even though you say no. You did when you explained about the last team, the last place team,
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense. All right, you ready to go to Duval? Tom from Jacksonville has got a 12-team redraft. Do you take Darrell Henderson or Josh Jacobs? They're ranked 35 to 40 on cheat sheets. I don't know. I don't think that this is even a valid question. In the sense that I think it's obvious. I think
it seems obvious.
It seems obvious because that offensive line with the Raiders is atrocious. And as bad as it was, it has gotten worse. When they pick Leatherwood from Alabama to be their savior, come on.
Isn't that the guy from the what movie was it?
I don't remember.
The Leatherface. Right?
Oh, yeah, no. So unless, look, Henderson will be good. Henderson will do a great job if healthy. But,
right.
And we remember what McVay did with Gurley was in order to keep him healthy, he kept exchanging him out. But are you going to rely on Funk to protect your quarterback, that high-paid quarterback you just got into free agency? So I think they're going to keep Henderson in there. I think they're going to pound the ball with Henderson. And Jacobs is going to be sharing now with Drake. So I just – unfortunately, Jacobs, I think, has just dropped pretty far now. And
it's amazing. They had such high expectations for him coming into last year.
And it's not his fault. I think he's a good running back. I think you put him on Dallas. You put him on another team. I think he will do great. I don't have a problem with Jacobs as a running back.
Yeah, looking from the outside in, this seems absolutely like a no-brainer. You always have to see how things end up. Right. Yeah. Maybe Josh Jacobs comes out this year and it's a different Josh Jacobs. And, the line obviously is going to have issues. They have good receivers there. So they certainly can open up, lanes for him.
Right.
But you throw in the Drake, you throw in the Drake issues there. And right now, Darrell Henderson has.
It's his team, man. It's his backfield.
It's his backfield to win and to keep. Right. And if he can do that, he's one of those guys that can certainly leapfrog a lot of these other running backs by the end of the year.
Let me ask you this. Would you be comfortable with him as an RB2 or would you have him strictly as an RB3/flex?
No, I think at this point, looking at the groupings of the RB2s, right. I think he's an RB2 right now.
I think that's very fair. I mean, look, your points are going to come from carries, right?
Right.
Unless you're Kamara, your points are going to come from carries. So in this case, as long as he gets the carries, as long as he stays healthy, then it's a go with Henderson.
Last year Henderson played 15 games, but he was getting, he would get like the first 2 series in a game. And you're like, oh, Henderson, and do great, and then not be used again.
And it was Malcolm Brown, or Cam Akers, absolutely.
He had 624 yards, 4.5 yard carry, yards average,
which is good.
16 catches, so basically about 1 a game, and 6 touchdowns. So not terrible. He played in 15 games. He didn't play in 16 games, but the way he was used, if you stretch that out over games, he would have had a pretty decent year.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so thumbs up for Henderson. The next one is from Roy in Poughkeepsie. Are there any teams that Are there any teams that I should stay clear of, like Houston, Cincy, or Detroit? I think he means fantasy. I don't think he means like not ever go to those cities. I'm actually going to Houston in a few weeks, but
that's right. Yeah.
I think he means fantasy. Do you stay away from players on the Texans, on the Bengals, on the Lions, or even the Jets, right? Do you take any of these players? It's going to be a crap show in Houston this year.
Yeah, there's always going to be like that one player on a team who, or they just might be awful. They just might be really, really awful.
It was like Jacoby Myers with New England when that offense, nobody on that offense was worth taking.
Yeah, I mean, Cincy, I don't know how Cincy's thrown into this question, because I think they have a lot of people that you could take off that team.
Maybe he just doesn't like Cincinnati.
That's certainly possible. A lot of people don't.
But I think the Jets can be on this list as well. But let's start with Houston, right? So we know we're not going to grab. No one's going to grab Tyrod Taylor as their QB1, and even in a 2 QB league, you're not growing with Tyrod Taylor. The running back situation is a little weird, right? You have Phillip Lindsay, you have David Johnson, both in their own respects could be good, but they're never going to take over.
And I think they have 15 or 16 receivers on that team right now.
Yeah, but I think
they keep trading for him.
I think Kuti and Cook are really the only ones that are worth talking about. I think out of all of those, I could definitely see having someone like Cook on my team, but I don't know. It depends who the quarterback is. He has to throw to somebody.
Right.
So I think Brandin Cooks is really, a good option, but I'm not going to have any shares of Lindsay or David Johnson or Kiki Cutie. I think if anything, it would be Cooks.
I think all of those guys are going to be, once you get to your bench. If you have some bench spots and you want to fill them with maybe guys to take, they're all flyers. Every one of them. David Johnson. They're all flyers at this point.
They're streamers.
David Johnson's
I look at them as streamers, but they're not going to be available for streaming, right? But if you have a buy situation, right, you need to pick somebody up. Look, a lot of people did that with Lindsay in Denver, where he was available a lot of times. And then, right. But I don't think I think Johnson and Lindsay will be picked up because of their past, their history. And I hope the people I'm playing every week are picking him up, because I don't think that they're going to be able to carry the load. Cincy, you've mentioned, look, it's either, Higgins or Boyd or Chase or Burrow or Mixon. I mean, there's going to be plenty of people that you can take in Cincinnati. In Detroit, DeAndre Swift, a lot of people like him. I'm down on Detroit. I'm not taking Jared Goff. I'm not taking DeAndre Swift, and I'm not taking any of the receivers.
I'm taking, I liked them last year. I like them even more this year, I think, with Swift. I think he's going to be a focal point of that offense. We'll see how that goes. I understand other people are not big fans. He's rated right in there in that like 17 to 23 range. He's that guy again.
Look,
we'll see how it goes.
He matched J.K. Dobbins with regard to, he didn't play week 18, but at the end of the season, it was the DeAndre Swift show. And right, he did have a lot of points, including a 24-point game in week 15. So he can have big games. I just think that this is a worse Detroit team than what we saw last year. I think without Stafford, without Marvin Jones, I think this team is going to struggle offensively. They're going to struggle defensively. Bless you. They're going to struggle defensively, which means that they're going to be in catch-up mode. And I think there's probably going to be a lot more passing than there is running. I don't think they're going to try to run out the clock. But who knows? Look, I'm not saying don't draft DeAndre Swift. I'm just saying, me personally, I'm not a fan. I'm a fan of his, right? I like Swift. I was hoping the Dolphins would have drafted Swift. In the situation with Detroit, I don't think that, for fantasy, that I could recommend him over a lot of the players that are in that same range, like Montgomery or Sanders or Henderson or Dobbins. I think that I would take them over, somebody like Swift.
Now,
and then
you would also mention to put the Jets into this list. Is there anybody on the Jets that you would consider drafting?
Maybe Davis. Look, we know that Davis is a good receiver, right?
Right.
He was one of Tannehill's major targets. We know that when he is healthy, again, question mark, he can perform well. But who is going to pass to him?
That's
the guy who's unsigned right now. I mean, I don't know. I'm staying away from that team. If I have to pick up Davis because I have no choice, but there are so many other receivers that I would grab instead of Corey Davis right now. I'm pulling up the list of where he's going right now, which is like 11th round. He's right around the same location as Jarvis Landry, who I would take ahead of him. Mike Williams, I would take ahead of him. Even Hollywood Brown, right? I'm taking Hollywood. I'm even taking Pittman in Indy. How about the guy that nobody is talking about, Darnell Mooney in Chicago? Darnell Mooney, nobody's talking about. He's in the shadow of Allen Robinson, but this guy has skills, and to me, he's one of my top sleepers.
And didn't
this coming season?
Didn't Chicago just trade away a wide receiver this week?
Yes, they did. They got rid of Miller.
Miller, thank you. Yes, he went to Houston.
Yeah, so that's true. Because the way that Mooney ended the season was very positive, and I think that if you can get a guy who's let me see, he had 11 catches in week 17. And he's going to get targeted a lot. And I think this offense is going to change. I think we're going to see I just think we're going to have a well-rounded offense, and I like the idea of Mooney. So, again, my point being, there are guys that I would take before Corey Davis.
I mean, the interesting thing in New York, and it's not that interesting, but they have got Zach Wilson, right? They also have Michael Carter. They're going to have rookies in there. Yeah. Can they make a splash? As we've seen with Burrow or these other guys. Yeah, it's possible. And Zach Wilson has the tools. He certainly could be a good quarterback. But does he have enough around him to really any of these guys make a fantasy impact? And that's the question that we're asking because we're doing a fantasy show.
Right. And as far as fantasy goes, a few have potential. Look, we're automatically writing in that Carter is going to be, the number one running back. I'm not even convinced he is. He's not necessarily going to get the starting job. So I don't know. I'm kind of staying away. That's why I need to feel a lot more warm and fuzzy when it comes to picking my starting team. And speaking of warm and fuzzy, thanks, Lisette from Baton Rouge, with the question, with Michael Thomas being, and this is a very similar question. I think Kenneth had asked a similar question. We didn't get to it yet, but now we don't have to. With Michael Thomas being hurt for possibly the first 8 weeks, how high should I draft Traquan Smith? And it's funny because I was looking at this whole issue with Michael Thomas, and Thomas keeps dropping, but Traquan is not going up by that same gap.
He's not. No.
No, he's not. And I don't understand why. But again, look, Traquan might have a good first half of the season. And then if Michael Thomas comes back, he just kind of fades away. So I like the idea of the handcuff. We don't usually think of handcuffs for wide receivers, right? We usually think of them only in the running back sense. But if I'm at the point where I feel comfortable taking Michael Thomas, I've got my starting lineup, I've got a few, and I'm going to pull the trigger, I'm making sure I pull the trigger on Traquan as well a little later on and be ready to dispose of him if necessary later.
I don't know. With all this injury news,
I don't know. It would be low.
Yeah. I don't think I want any shares of any New Orleans wide receivers right now. I just don't. They're I mean, Troutman, right? Tight end is probably the player there besides Kamara that you want any share of.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm just saying, if I had to take somebody, if I had to take Michael Thomas, I'm going to grab Traquan. I'm not going to grab Deontay Harris. So
interestingly enough, I think if Winston is the quarterback there, I think Traquan Smith's value goes way up.
I agree.
The receivers there. I think that. So, but nobody knows. Who knows what the coach is going to do? What's his name? Yeah.
Yeah. Well. What about Callaway?
Sean Payton. Thank you.
So if Marquez Callaway,
both of those guys.
Yeah. Well, look, it'll be interesting. We'll see, but I get your point, and I agree. And Lissette, I guess the point is stay away from both if you can.
Yeah.
And
if that's what you're down to, down to, take right. There's a lot of other players in that range.
He's going to be a free agent. Nobody's drafting Traquan. Even if you have Michael Thomas, he's going to be a free agent. So you might be able to stream him. TJ from Brooklyn wants to know Godwin or Evans. This is the question of eternity. It's like, what is the meaning of life?
Right.
Do you go with Godwin? Do you go with Evans? I don't know. I mean, I've had them flip-flopping on my list over the past few months. Where do you stand on these two receivers, Brad?
So this was a big question last year as well, right? Weren't they going like number 6 and 7 in drafts as far as wide receivers, right? They were right there. My personal opinion, I feel that Brady in the second half of the year had a better chemistry with Evans for the most part than Godwin. And that's what I'm going to lean towards.
Yeah, that was interesting. And I agree. I think that because Godwin had such a great year in 2019, everyone assumed he was going to be the man in 2020. It didn't happen. I mean, it did happen, but not to the extent that everybody thought it was going to happen. I actually still have them back to back, but I agree with you. I have Evans over Godwin. Both of them, though, I have probably down around wide receiver 20 in that range. Probably not going to draft either one of them until the end of the 4th round.
Can we talk about Tampa for a minute? Not that we want to because it's Brady, but at least he's not in New England anymore. But they're returning all 22 starters from last year.
Yeah, that's insane.
That is amazing. That's like a little league team, right?
Yeah.
Right. Right. It's unbelievable. And they not only are they returning those starters, but the last second half of the season and going through the playoffs, they were unbelievable. Does that make Brady? Brady's what, 43 or 44 years old? Is he a draftable QB?
Hell, of course
he's got to be, right?
He'll end up as a top 10 QB, and he will be a top 10 QB draft. Look, I hate the man, and he pees sitting down. I hate the guy, but he's going to be
Wait, how do you know that?
He's the kind of guy that would pee sitting down. And
okay, got you.
I think he would be taken. I would take him before I take a Joe Burrow. To me, Ryan Tannehill, Tom Brady, Matt Ryan, I think they're all around that pipe, and possibly even Stafford. So I think
it amazes me. It just
year.
Well, let's for just talking about this, let's bring Loops on here, right? Because he's in Tampa.
All right.
Right. What are you hearing out of Tampa?
I'm actually not in Tampa anymore.
Did you graduate?
Oh no, I'm just home right now.
Oh.
I moved out of my apartment. Okay. I moved out.
Oh, you did?
But I'm moving into a new apartment in a couple of weeks. But I honestly think it's going to be Evans because I think it's always been Evans in my opinion since he's been on that team, and I think it's always going to be him as a go-to guy there.
Are they going to repeat as champions?
Oh, I think they'll get close. I think they'll be close. They almost lost to Washington.
If Brady's if Brady stays healthy, do they repeat?
Repeating in the NFL is very difficult, right? I mean, I know that's
Indeed.
an understatement, but it's very difficult. And the reason it's difficult is not just because of the probabilities, which is one thing, but teams are after you, right? You're now the champs, and everybody is game planning that game. So, I, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think they're going to I would not be shocked if they did, but the chances of them repeating, I think, are much lower. I think Green Bay.
I'm curious.
Will definitely not lose to them this year in the championship game.
I'm curious how many teams in the 50-year history of the NFL have brought back all 22 starters for the next year. Right? I'm curious.
Nobody.
It can't.
I don't think anybody has.
Right. And I'm not saying that's the recipe for another Super Bowl, but it certainly doesn't hurt when you just won one with those guys.
I'm curious now that you say that. I wonder with the 72-73 Dolphins. I know that they brought a lot back from the undefeated season.
Right. A lot is one thing, but all of them,
right.
is pretty amazing.
So you said, do you think Scotty Miller is going to, or that was just a joke?
That was a joke. That was me just sitting behind the scenes, just making myself feel good. Scotty Miller, though, he's going to have a good year.
All right. So I don't have I don't have any other questions right now in the mailbag. I know that at the end of last week, Brad, we were going to talk about defenses, and we didn't talk about defenses. And I don't know if you have all your information. I know I'm going to throw this graphic up real quick here. This was your list from last week of the top 15 defenses. Let me get rid of this banner here. Okay. Top 15 defenses. You actually have Tampa Bay at number 3. And that was the thing that I was talking about was, our team's going to repeat being number 1. Pittsburgh now has done it 2 years in a row. You think they're going to do it 3 years in a row?
Well, I mean, they you got to have a list, right? So here's my thought on defense. I was thinking about defenses a lot today, and I was thinking, I can't stand drafting defenses, right? It's like last year, what was it? San Francisco or Pittsburgh was like the top 2 defenses, and excuse me, then all of a sudden they're terrible. They fall apart, and they're in a division that has other, they're playing other teams that are lighting it up against them. Defenses are so hard to pick, and they rarely do the top defenses. Several years ago, it was Chicago, right? They were like the number 1 defensive pick for like 5 years in a row, right? And they kept doing it, and then they fall apart. Yeah, it just changes. Right. Right. Look at that list. Pittsburgh did it 2 years in a row. But other than that, it just changes everything. It never happens.
Not just the ones who are number 1. Look at the ones who are 2 and 3. And then you can see where they ended up the next year. So the Patriots, who were number 2 in 2019, ended up at 19 in 2020.
Right. Well, they also had half their team sit out because of COVID.
No, I understand, but go back to the Bears who had unbelievable. They ended up 23rd the next year. So you have Steelers, Colts, and Rams as 1, 2, and 3 ending last year, right?
Right.
What are we going to see here? We've got Pittsburgh at 1 again, the Rams at 4. So it's very interesting. I agree that I'm going to see Washington is definitely a team that could end up number 1. The Rams could end up number 1. Cleveland.
But you say Washington, and look at their division. Look at Washington's division, right? They're going to be playing Dallas. They're going to be,
Philly.
The Giants are a big coin flip right now, right? We don't know about the Giants, depending on Barkley, and they did get Galladay. So who knows what they're going to be like if they can find somebody to throw to anybody. But defense, it's like flip a coin. Pick somebody, between 7 and 15 and see how it goes, and then stream them is kind of the way I look at defenses.
and this deep thought that you've been having, this contemplation on defense that you've been having. I know that in our league, our old league, our South Florida Football League, defenses go pretty high compared to ADP, right? I mean, and that's been the trend. And look, we can pull up some old draft boards and look at the defenses are in what color. I don't know if it's pink here or if that's quarterback.
No, that's defense. Yeah,
that's defense.
So right there you have them in the eighth round.
Eighth round.
Sixth. There's one in the sixth round. Is that the end of the sixth round? Is that Jackson? Is that maybe Jacksonville? San Francisco? Was that last year?
I don't know.
I don't know here.
Here's another one, and then the pink again. So now we got the Rams going in the 9th round or 10th. No, Chicago actually went in the 8th round here.
Yeah, what it is those top tier like 3 or 4 defenses will go early, and then there'll be like this long wait, like another 3, 4, 5 rounds for another run on defenses, and that's kind of that's always how it's been in our league, always. And anytime I've ever reached for a defense, kind of like I did with Lamar Jackson last year, it always ends up being a bust. Yeah, always. Like years ago, I did it. I believe the last time I did it was San Diego. I remember taking them early, and early meaning like 8th round, 7th round, whatever it was, and they were awful. They were absolutely awful. I don't remember exactly what year it is, but we could probably look back at some boards and figure it out. Yeah. But it bit me in the ass. So I always wait, and then I end up streaming, and you go with matchups and go from there.
All right. So listen, we're running out of time. What I want to do, the last thing I wanted to bring up was a tweet that was by Kevin McCullough. He's with Bleacher Report. And he tweeted this. He said, I would argue if your starting quarterback isn't willing to vaccinate and is willing to put his team at an incredible competitive disadvantage of potentially and unnecessary losing a starting quarterback during the season, that QB is neither a captain nor a leader. And I don't know if he's talking about Dak Prescott, right, who wouldn't admit to vaccination.
Right.
He thought it was HIPAA, which it isn't. But, I tend to agree with what Colin is saying, and I'm not trying to make this political. We're looking at it from, and let's bring Loops in because I want him to weigh in on this as well. Is it your job as quarterback, as captain, as leader to do what you can to make your team win as opposed to putting them at risk of not having the players you need to win a game?
Am I going first on this?
So here's my opinion on you go ahead. Go ahead, Loops.
Oh, okay. I got you. I just wasn't sure who started. But I think regardless whether or not your quarterback is your literal team captain, they're a captain regardless, with or without the patch on their jersey. But if somebody's quarterback is choosing not to take a vaccine, it's putting their team at risk either way, captain or not. Backup quarterback going to have to step in because somebody has COVID and they're out 2-3 weeks, depending on how sick they are. It's not a good look. But I think from a captain or leader standpoint, they should be, and getting their teammates who look up to them to do it as well.
Brad?
So here's my opinion on the NFL with vaccination. Political stuff aside, people have the right to get vaccinated or not. That's just the way it is. Nobody's mandating you getting vaccinated. Whether you're getting vaccinated or not puts you as a captain or not to lead the team. Well, the NFL is making it that and the NFL is a privately run company, so they have the right to mandate whether you're vaccinated or not. Just like a restaurant can let you in or not let you in, or whatever the case may be. So those players need to understand, all the players on the team and all the players that gets vaccinated and don't get vaccinated need to understand that. Do the owners have the right to not pay those players, to cut those players, to not let those players play? That's a question too. Do I think they're a leader? I don't think a vaccination should make it whether you're a leader on the field or off the field. I think,
but we're talking about a leader as it relates to missing time, not as it relates to
you're talking
getting a vaccine.
Well, but they're not. They'd be missing time and potentially putting a game at risk.
Right, that's my point.
They get COVID, but you're potentially putting a religious belief or a lot of other beliefs potentially.
No.
Now,
go ahead.
In front of a belief in, even if it's just your own belief, right? That you don't want to get vaccinated.
There's religious and medical exemptions,
right?
To
And
the NFL's policy on vaccination. So forget religion for a second.
It could just be your personal. It could be your personal preference.
This is like saying that your quarterback likes to take his Ferrari out and drive 100 miles per hour.
Stupid too.
Without his lights on. Does that? What I'm saying is, to me, he's endangering. I
don't disagree with that.
Okay, so he's not being a good leader or a good captain if he does things that's going to put the team at risk. But as somebody who doesn't get vaccinated, it's not just him, right? He could give COVID to other people. It's not just him. So
100%.
On a life basis, he's a douchebag. In the NFL, he's not a leader. And that's the way I look at it. Kenneth, so what's going on?
I'd like to offer my take in regards to the question that's being posed right now.
Okay.
I also would have to echo your sentiment, Kamish, because of pretty much what you had just mentioned. I agree. Anyone that's not getting the vaccine is definitely, and of course it being an NFL sense, he is indeed putting his team at risk because of the fact that he could spread it to others.
For sure.
So
absolutely.
So yeah, I definitely agree with y'all in regards to the QB who's not getting the vaccine. And there's also one other person who had a disagreement in regards to this vaccine. I don't know if y'all heard, but coach from the Minnesota Vikings, I believe, Rick Dennison.
Yeah, Dennison, and so did Popovich from New England. Both of them refused to get it, and they were let go. Look, I'm questioning whether or not Dennison's firing is going to affect Cook. That's something that I've been researching actually. But we're talking about leaders. We're talking about let's bring this into fantasy, right? Because I mentioned whether or not Dennison's departure will make a dent in Dalvin Cook's numbers. Are there, if it comes out that Dak Prescott decides that he's not going to get vaccinated, do you draft Dak Prescott? Not to make a point, not to say, well, I'm not going to draft a guy who won't get vaccinated, but to say, I'm going to draft a guy who might, quote unquote, get hurt or get COVID.
No, because if they're going to get COVID, that's going to be one game they're going to miss, maybe potentially two, but you're not going to not draft a guy because of that. Come on. Well,
look, you might draft somebody, if it was running back, you might grab his handcuff where normally you wouldn't for something like that. Just like you would with an off-injured player, you have a handcuff. You got to make sure that you have a good QB2 in the event you're going to draft someone who doesn't want to take the vaccine.
And interestingly enough, we had the same discussion last year, right? As far as what happens if your team is not playing that week, if they reschedule, whatever the case may be, right? And with what the NFL, and we could talk about this next week, but with what the NFL has just come out with all the guidelines as far as both teams potentially having to miss the game and all of that, how do you work that in fantasy wise? Right. There's a lot of questions with that.
Right.
If they're talking about if there's a breakout, they're just going to bench both teams.
That's right. All right. So Kenneth, one final word. What do you got?
As far as the question as far as the issue that you posed with,
hold on, Kenneth. It sounds like you're putting your hand over the receiver. Try again.
Now, as far as the issue that you posed with Prescott, I wouldn't draft him because he is putting, as you said before, he's putting his team at risk.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that thought, Kenneth, and thank you for the call. And we're looking forward to hearing your question next Tuesday night. If we do a show, we'll let everyone know during the week what our schedule is going to be like for next week. It might shift a little bit.
If you do the show next week, what would the topic be so I can do some research? We'll
let you know.
We'll let you know.
We're not sure yet. Okay.
All
right. Thanks, Kenneth.
Peace out, Kenneth.
I don't think that not drafting a player is going to come into play as far as COVID. You know, there's always players that have done things wrong, and ethically, can you take this player?
And that's about fantasy for another show that I would love to explore as to whether or not you draft, people who are not good people. Do you take?
Well, then we probably have to. Then you're very much slimming the player pool if you do that.
Yeah,
possibly.
Yeah, that's true. But that is something I want to talk about at another time. For sure. But okay, so we had Mailbag was full, right? So we were able to answer a lot of questions tonight. Next week, our schedule is kind of up in the air. We'll let everybody know what we're doing, what day we're going to be available, what we're going to be talking about. We'll probably start doing some mocks. Obviously, there'll be a lot more news coming out of camp by that time. So, it's getting closer and closer and closer, and I'm very excited.
Excellent. And thank you, Loops, for doing everything for the show.
Filling in for 2020. A lot better looking.
As always.
So, that's always good. All right, guys. We will see you next time.
Have a great week.
All right.